Hey there, moderately voiced here with a brand new story for you. This time, it's Specters of the Deep by Abigail C. Trevor. Now, you might be wondering, what is Specters of the Deep? In the shortest explanation I can possibly give, it's a choose your own adventure story. But we play as some kind of revenant, I think? Anyways, let's get going. Chapter 1, Death of the Hero. Two Vatrian soldiers charge straight at you, their blades held aloft. An archer atop the gate picks off one, and he falls into the muck that surrounds you. His companion doesn't so much as look back. You recognize the look of grim determination in her eyes, the refusal to admit any distractions. If Vatrai can claim the Baron's Gate, they'll have won the day, and they grow closer with every push. She knows how near she is to victory, but she still has to face you. Her running strike at your neck is obvious, and you parry it without a thought. But you miss the dagger she pulls at first. She aims for your bad side. It's obvious which it is. And your attempt to twist away is sluggish under the circumstances. She catches you somewhere around your wrist. It's deep, you think. You can't feel the pain, but you feel the fresh blood flowing over the dried. It doesn't matter. It's not your sword arm. If your muted reaction startles her, it's only for a moment, and she parries your answering blow with ease. She's much lighter on her feet than you are, right now at least, and for the span of a few heavy breaths, she dances easily around your sword. Finally, you slash her along the arm, but it's a narrow cut, and she takes the opportunity to lunge with the dagger again. Normally, you'd never let someone pull the same trick twice. This time, she buries the blade in your gut and drags it across. There's quite a lot more blood at your feet now. You don't falter. You don't flinch. You stand. It's now that she begins to look afraid. No point in drawing this out. I put my own blade through her chest. It's a matter of moments with her speed and bravado gone. She's so occupied staring at her own handiwork in your stomach that you're not sure she even sees it coming. You cut through to her heart, and she falls with a gasping breath to join her friend with the arrow in his neck, and all the other bodies at your feet. Once she is down, you pull the dagger free from your gut and drop it to the ground. You'd normally take a great deal more care in removing a weapon from a wound, but it's a pointless thing to worry about, under the circumstances. You already know you're going to die today. By all rights, you should no longer even be conscious. The wizards departed some time ago to attend to Queen Ragna, whose safety is paramount, while you, sworn sword to the crown of Galdron, were left to guard the only way into the city. They're too far away to offer any magical healing now, but before they went, they cast a spell on you. One so complex it required half a dozen of Galdron's best wizards working together. A spell to dull nearly any pain, and to keep muscles and organs functioning long past the point where they should. It doesn't heal. You took at least 2 wounds that could have killed you before the latest to your gut. Nasty gashes to the blood vessels in your shoulder and thigh that there hasn't been time to bandage properly. They're still bleeding now, and when enough of your blood runs out, you'll be dead. What the spell will do is keep you standing until then. It's the only reason you're standing now. Well, that and one other thing. I'm sworn to Queen Ragna. I will fight for her as long as there's breath in my body. You can't count just how long ago the first war between Galdron and Vatrai began, but the present one has lasted just about 2 decades. It wasn't long after you were chosen as Galdron's champion that it broke out. Ever since they killed Prince Elias, Vatrai has taken the advantage. That means they've redoubled their efforts to take out Queen Ragna, which, like as not, will end this. They chased your forces from the capital on the island's coast, up the river Galita to the city of Helma, where the royal wizards are keeping the queen hidden now. There's only one way into Helma, the Baron's Gate, and your mission is to defend it with what remains of your life. The queen's cousin, a duke on the continent, has promised reinforcements to beat back Vatrai. But the waters between here and Hiberna are treacherous, and the Vatrians have been intercepting your messages. You're not certain when he'll reach you, and if you fall before then, it's likely the queen will fall too. You've already been at your post for nearly a day. You've wielded your sword for the royal family of Galdron since you were little more than a child, when you first rose to prominence in the eyes of your nation. You fought for the queen in the capital, and you fought all along the road to Helma, and you're still fighting now. Whenever the Duke arrives, whether or not the Duke arrives, You'll only stop fighting when you're dead. Your head throbs and darkness bleeds at the edges of your vision. You still don't feel any pain, not really, but faintness and fatigue weigh more and more heavily upon you. Even if any of the wizards were still here, you doubt there's anything more they could do for you now. There's only so far magical healing can go. I'm prepared to die in Galdrin's service. I always have been. You accepted this risk long ago. The life you've led has always been worth it. There's a rumbling of the ground beneath you. For a moment you fear magical assault, but then the rocks and earth tumble from the sides of the pass around you, blocking off the path for Vitrai's forces and leaving your soldiers untouched. There's a collective sigh of relief from the warriors around you. The queen must still be safe. The monarchs of Galdrin and Vitrai bear gifts from the dragons. Bright red gems called the eyes of the serpent, implanted in their very bodies. It grants them a connection to the earth, power over each of their halves of the island of Yarda. Queen Ragna of Galdrin can shape the land itself, as can King Kennet of Vitrai. That the queen has found a moment to tap into her connection and help you means that the wizards must have found a safe place for her. It still isn't going to save you, but it will give you a moment to breathe. The downside to the Eye of the Serpent is that if a monarch is killed while wearing one, that connection to the land rebounds upon itself. The earth itself experiences the death of the monarch. What sort of catastrophes that would entail, you've never known for certain, but it ought to be enough for the other side to win the war. That's why the king and queen are such prominent targets. If Queen Ragna falls, so does Galdrin. That's the impression the dragons gave you, anyway. They've never been very specific. The queen's intervention likely won't keep the Vitraians at bay forever, particularly not if they put their own wizards to work on it. But it's enough to grant you some respite. You give your soldiers the order to fall back closer to the Baron's Gate. It's an old gate and an old name. The Holm family were the Barons of Helma once upon a time. Now they're the monarchs of all of Galdrin. Queen Ragna Holm at their head, and they rule from Ista on the coast. Old as the Baron's Gate is, it's sturdy enough for you to lean against, which is all you really want right now. Around you, Galdrin's forces shift and mutter uncomfortably. You've fought alongside them for years. Other faces are new to you, but all of them know who you are. A few of them are young enough to have grown up on legends of you. They know you climbed Mount Breakwater, outwitted the dragon Mist, led the charge at the Hill of Souls, rescued Prince Otto. And they know you're dying now. They're probably expecting you to say something. Don't be afraid. The Queen's looking out for us. It'll be all right. You see a few tentative smiles spreading through the group before a rumbling starts up in the pass again. It's coming from the wall of rocks and mud before you, and, for a moment, you dare to hope that Queen Ragna is showing up your fortifications further. But then the wall starts to shudder, and with a sound almost like breaking glass, it shatters in an instant. Shatters isn't quite the word you realize. The whole thing has disintegrated, turned to nothing more than particles of dust in the air. It's a work of incredible wizardry to dispose of the Queen's handiwork in an instant, and you know before the dust clears what you're about to see. Strolling out of that dust is a pale, lean figure in a robe of Vitraian blue, hair streaming out behind her in red gold waves. She walks unhurriedly forward, somehow entirely untouched by the cloud of debris. That archer atop the gate seizes their moment and launches an arrow, a foot from the woman's face. The arrow stops in midair and rapidly reverses direction. You hear the archer fall with a scream. The red-haired woman doesn't look at the archer, or the arrow, or even at the gate. Her eyes, blue as her robes, are fixed, as ever, on you. "My word, what have they done to you?" says Cecilia Onker in an infuriatingly familiar drawl. "I was certain the rumors were exaggerated." 20 years ago, you answered the dragon's call. So did Cecilia. You triumphed over every challenge they set you, and won your country an Eye of the Serpent for your troubles. So did Cecilia. When one eye proved insufficient for your masters and the wars began, you were named as your crown's foremost champion. And so was Cecilia. She's your equal and opposite, Vitrai's court wizard and Galdrin's sworn sword. Every legend about you has an answering one in Cecilia. In taverns across Yarda, people place bets on which of you will finally kill the other. Half of those bets are probably about to pay out today. We're closer than anyone realizes. A rivalry like this can be intoxicating, arousing even. I'm sure your anatomists were very pleased with themselves, but this isn't even impressive work, Cecilia says. Her voice is as steadily superior as ever, but she can't quite look you in the eye for more than a moment at a time. I mean, all they've really done is kept a few parts of you from working, so that your body won't notice all the other parts have stopped working. They haven't done anything to help you. It's crude, really. And what's the point of it? Is it supposed to inspire the masses, seeing you keep standing in spite of it all? Having to look at the mess they've made of you doesn't seem especially heartening to me. She turns from you toward the rest of the soldiers gathered around you. Is this inspirational? Does this inspire you? This pile of meat with a face? As has frequently been the case in your encounters with Cecilia, your comrades in arms have gone still and silent, too terrified of her reputation to go after her. Though, on further inspection, in at least a few cases, it's less that they're petrified in fear and more that the mud they're standing in is abruptly turned to stone, locking their feet in place. You have to look down to realize the same thing has happened to you. Sensation is so dulled to you right now that you didn't feel it happening. Cecilia hasn't even broken a sweat. I'm sworn to protect Galdrin until my last breath. That's what this is for. And you do the same. We are not as alike as you like to think we are, Cecilia says. She's still having trouble looking at you. I will not die while Vitrai still needs me. The noises of the battle beyond the pass rise into the air, shouts and clashes of blades, though no one but Cecilia approaches the gate. Cecilia herself looks over her shoulder for a moment, then back to you, resolute. No one's coming for you, she says. We know you sent for the Duke, and we know he's not coming. You know that too, by now, don't you? I'm not sure I could bear how tragic it would be if you didn't realize that. She doesn't offer any evidence, you notice. She's not one to shy away from fully proving her point, not at a moment like this. If the Vitrians had sunk the Duke's fleet or received some intelligence from the continent, you think she'd have told you. If she knew it for a fact, and wasn't just trying to dispirit you. You're lying, I say, staring her dead in the eyes. Cecilia laughs softly. Did they keep you around for intimidation purposes? Is that it? She asks. She offers no other response to the accusation. There's another louder series of cries from the battlefield, though you can't discern the details of what you're hearing. Cecilia looks backward again, then toward the ground for a moment before straightening with a sigh. Well, she says, it'll be quicker this way. I want you to know that. You hear a deep rumble yet again. This time it comes from behind you, more specifically from the gate you're currently leaning against, locked in place. The old stone gate, lined with cracks that are splintering further as you watch the whole thing shake apart into boulders larger than you are. Galdrin is under my protection. Nothing will ever change that. You think you're getting confused. The seconds break apart and crash against the edges of your mind. You're dying. You will die. You have died. In the span of your last breath, you can't tell the difference between staring at the rocks above you, knowing they'll crush the life from you, and the moment when that death occurs. What you can do is remember. You remember 20 years ago, when the dragons emerged from isolation on their frozen isle in the north to make an announcement that they had prizes they were willing to award to Galdrin and Vitrai if the nations could send representatives to best a series of challenges they'd set. In response, King Frederick of Galdrin, Queen Ragna's father, set his own challenges to determine Galdrin's champion, and you, only 16, outshone every competitor. I didn't need to be faster or stronger than any of them, because I was smarter than all of them. The king laid out contests of all sorts, and you put your wits to use in them all. You saw through your opponent's tactics in the fights. You found the quickest paths in the races. You answered every question and riddle the finest thinkers of Galdrin could pose. By the time the king named you as Galdrin's representative to the dragons, the whole country already knew your name. What is your name? The rocks are falling. So much is starting to slip away. None of those. Something different. Elwoody Sorrowford. They cheered the name of the streets, even then, before you'd visited the Dragon's Isle, before your greatest feats. Elwitty Sorrowford, the boy who'd bring Cauldron salvation. Salvation, they said, because tensions with Vatrai were climbing even then, and everyone thought the dragon's gifts could finally help Cauldron triumph. That the gifts were also offered to Vatrai seemed immaterial at the time. Whatever they were, surely Cauldron would make better use of them. Assuming, of course, that you didn't outshine Vatrai so thoroughly in the trials that the prizes were awarded to you alone. You all thought that was a possibility at the time. The dragons never did make the terms very clear. Your age was such a point of fascination in Galdrin that it surprised you to find that Vatrai's champion was no older than you were. If she'd also won a series of similar contests in her homeland, she never told you about it. For the first few days of your acquaintance, Cecilia Onker didn't speak to you at all. You had so few moments like that with her. Quiet ones. Perhaps the two of you should have savored it. Then again, before all the excitement, perhaps it wouldn't have been the same. You and Cecilia sailed together through frigid waters to the Isle of the Dragons. If the Isle has a less literal name, the dragons have never seen fit to inform you. Then again, it likely couldn't be expressed in words. In their natural forms, dragons can't speak aloud, communicating with one another through a kind of psychic exchange that, so far as you understand it, consists more of pure concepts than anything you'd recognize as verbal expression. They can project their thoughts in language you recognize as well, and those that can take human shape can speak as a human would. But most of the dragons you've known were uninterested in both processes at best. It was astonishing when they willingly reached out with the offer of the eyes. Before, while you were not precisely enemies, the lack of communication made it difficult to call them friends. Vesper was the exception to draconic indifference, a black dragon who greeted you with startling warmth. Dragons' ages are largely a mystery to you, except that they don't correlate with the humans in a meaningful way. But you understood two things about Vespers. That she was more than a century your senior, and that as far as the dragons were concerned, she was hardly older than you and Cecilia, just barely an adult. Newly practiced in both speaking and shapeshifting, she accompanied the two of you on your journey across the Isle, not so much guiding you as studying the first humans she had ever met. "Do not mind the tests," she told you, not long after you met, walking beside you in human skin. Her speech was always surprisingly rapid for someone who had only recently begun to speak at all. You understood that dragons exchanged thoughts faster than words could be formed, and wondered if Vesper was striving for that pace. "Everything is a test with us. We grow bored otherwise, and we abhor boredom." "Is that why you're offering these prizes? Boredom?" No, Vesper said, shaking her head. "The elders determined that we must. I cannot tell you why. There are things we are all forbidden." Before you could ask what she meant, she shifted back to her dragon form and began psychically attempting to convince you and Cecilia to ride on her back. "The new perspective will delight you," she insisted. "Or at least it will surprise you, and that is near to the same thing. For us. I have not done this before, so I will be delighted as well. You will probably not fall." Cecilia had little patience for her, so Vesper attached herself more closely to you, forever chattering and offering to spar with you in both of her forms. She still visits Easta sometimes, one of the primary emissaries the dragons occasionally send to check in on the Eye. You're never going to see her again. You're never going to see a lot of people again. The rocks are falling. I always knew I'd die in battle, but I'm furious that it's Cecilia killing me. Memories are still swirling through your mind, pulling you in 100 different directions. The dragons set you more tasks than your king had, directing you all across the island. Climbing mountains, solving mazes carved in ice, even fighting the dragons themselves from time to time, though the bouts were strictly never lethal. Whatever their intentions, and you're still not sure you know the whole of those, the dragons had no interest in killing you. You and Cecilia proved to be evenly matched, not necessarily in every challenge, but on the whole. Neither of you was more skilled than the other. You saw through the dragon's puzzles and riddles in moments, while Cecilia had her own talents. She had a determination that frightened me, and even frightened the dragons. You could tell the dragons expected some of their challenges to cow you, but Cecilia never backed down. She would stride through icy waters and shout to rouse the dragons from their private telepathic discussions, all without so much as flinching. You had your moments too, of course. You could never quite tell if the dragons were impressed with either of you, but they never sent you home. The climb up Mount Breakwater was one of the most difficult of the trials you faced, a sheer wall of ice with hardly any safe places to set your feet. You rested at the summit, bandaging each other's wounds at a meager campfire. You'd spent the day scaling the mountain and nearly fallen half a dozen times each. "They're trying to kill us," Cecilia announced. She leaned against you as she spoke, and might have held your hand, but both of your palms had been scraped bloody in the climb. You could feel the taut fury in her posture. "The only thing I haven't worked out is why they're doing it like this." "Why would they do it at all? They've always ignored us before." "Something's changed, can't you tell?" Cecilia rested her head on your shoulder. "The very fact that they aren't ignoring us anymore means something's more different than any of us have realized." "Many things change all the time, but that in itself is not a reason to kill you," came Vesper's voice in your minds, dark wings beating as she flew up in front of you. "Also, you are children, by human standards, and infants by draconic standards. Would you like me to carry you down?" In the end, when you and Cecilia had sweated and bled across what felt like the whole of the island, the dragons called a halt. They were now content, they said, and they awarded you each a dark red gem somewhat smaller than your palm, the Eyes of the Serpent, to give each of your leaders dominion over half of the island. When asked why they'd give up such valuable prizes and what this had to do with the trials you'd overcome, the dragon said only that they could not wield the gems themselves, and that they needed to know your worth. You asked once where the name had come from, but the dragons gave no answer at all. The Eyes of the Serpent didn't resemble any eyes you'd ever seen, serpentine or otherwise. They were just cloudy and red. You brought them home to your leaders, to King Frederick in Easta and Queen Dorothea in Baran. They were pleased but never satisfied, not while their opposite number held the same prize. It wasn't long after that the wars began. The wars that led you here, with the rocks above your head. Time rushes back into place. The rocks are falling. In a moment, they will have fallen. And in another moment, you will be dead. You think you hear, beyond Cecilia's averted gaze, the sounds of horns blaring on the wind. A sound very like the signal Queen Ragna asked the Duke to give when he arrived. But it could just be the air rushing around you. And then the rocks have fallen. You stopped feeling anything some time ago, but now everything else has stopped too. There's nothing more. You don't actually know just how it is that you know it's been a long time. When you come back to consciousness and back to the world, you remember fighting at Helma and dying at Helma, and then nothing until now. But somehow Helma feels a great distance away. You are aware of nothing else in those first moments when some fragment of your being wakes up. You can't see, you can't feel, you have no idea where you are. If you're still crushed under the rubble of Baron's Gate, there's no pressure or weight above you. You aren't breathing, and you feel no need or desire to. You aren't certain if you have a body at all, or just a mind, a sense of yourself. The one thing you can do is hear, or perhaps not even that. It's less like hearing and more like receiving a dragon's psychic communication, though perhaps that's because you don't have ears. There are no words at first, only a discordant impression of sibilant whispers and guttural screams. By the time the voice, or presence, perhaps, manages something that sounds at all like an attempt at language, you can only discern one word. Eyes. What? You have no idea if your own thoughts carry you back to whatever it is that's speaking to you. There's no response but a return to the blend of hisses and screaming, and no change in your senses or your surroundings. That's all you know. For a length of time you have no way of measuring, until the voice suddenly rises into a grotesque shriek that would split your skull if you had any certainty that you had one. Bring them back! Then lights flood in and water's rushing all around you. On second look, the room you find yourself in is not particularly well lit. On a second look, the room you find yourself in is not particularly well lit. It only felt bright compared to the utter darkness you found yourself in when you first awoke. Wherever you are now, you think it's actually subterranean, and almost the only light you can see comes from a deep crack in the wall that seems to lead up to the sky. You are underground, but you aren't beneath the rocks that crush the life from you. You're in a chamber, large and deliberately built. Aside from the split in one wall and the water pooling beneath you, it's neatly carved and organized, with niches built into the walls and platforms arrayed across the floor. The sensation of sight is still returning to you, and you have to study the platforms for some time to realize what you're actually looking at. Caskets. They're ornately decorated, mostly with a large oak tree with the roots stretching down through the ground to the ocean, the royal crest of the Holmes. You look down, finally, to find the shape of your legs stretching down into another casket, emblazoned with the same crest. Elwoody Sorrowford, Defender of Galdron, is engraved across the top. These are the royal catacombs. I'm not a home. How could I have been buried here? You died. It's reasonable that you'd be buried if they could recover your body from the ruins of the gate. But why here, among your betters? You received many honors in your lifetime, but you were never treated as one of the royal family. Still dazed, you look down to study yourself further. You're wearing the clothes you wore beneath your armor when you died, though the armor itself is gone. You look healthy and whole as far as you can tell. Certainly there are no signs of a gate having collapsed on top of you, but your colors are muted to almost gray, and your feet are definitely passing through the casket beneath you. You feel the barest hint of a sensation as they do, a slight heaviness, but nothing like the resistance you should be facing. You can't feel anything so much as you can feel the water. The water, you realize, is running into the chamber through the crack in the wall, filling it almost entirely. You're near enough that the water splashes onto you and flows over one end of your casket. While the water passes through you the same way your feet are passing through the casket, it feels cold and real. Nothing like your feet within the stone. That's odd enough that it takes you a moment to realize what else is strange. You know where the royal catacombs lie beneath the castle, and there's no reason the water should be flowing into them. For that matter, there's no reason there should be a hole in the wall, let alone one that's growing before your eyes. The world around you shakes. An earthquake, you think. You notice it more as a visual sensation than a physical one. The crack in the wall widens further, and you swear the ceiling above you bows, just a little. The ceiling that supports the entire royal castle of Galdron. Urgency finally returning to your dazed, spectral mind, you turn around to study the rest of the scene. Behind you, the rest of the tomb is in such a commotion that you can't quite believe you didn't notice it sooner, though in your defense, there have been a variety of things to occupy your attention. The room is filled nearly to bursting with ghosts. There have always been rumors that the island of Yarda is haunted, legends and storybooks, but you've never seen the evidence until now, and until seeing yourself, of course. The spirits drift through walls, block the sunlight, rise up from the water. They are and aren't like you. They have the same gray translucence, but to a much greater extent. From what you can see, your features are intact, even the scars on your skin and the stitching in your clothes. The other ghosts are so faded that they're hardly discernible at all. Sometimes little more than the shape of a face or a shadow, and their touch seems to corrode in a way that yours doesn't. As they pass by the eternal resting places of the monarchs of Galdron, caskets topple and break open, royal skeletons spilling out across the floor. They don't respond to the destruction they're inciting, or even to one another, specters passing through each other without a care. The only sign they give of awareness at all is a vague murmuring, a low sound in the background that you can't quite make out. It's almost, but not quite, like the voice that spoke when you first woke up. You find yourself compelled to listen further, though at the same time, you wonder what makes you different from them. If you risk giving up something that makes you stand apart. I listen cautiously. I can't succumb to their influence, but to stop this chaos, I need to understand them. The ghosts are desecrating the royal tombs of Galdron. Whatever they are, they're enemies of the crown. To fight them, you must know them, but you must not stray too far. You concentrate on the murmuring, steeling yourself at the same time. Despite your efforts, the noises are muddled in your ears, at least a dozen voices blending together with other sounds that don't much resemble voices at all. In the end, you only discern a handful of words that might come from any number of throats. Why? What's want with me? Your attention is drawn from the ghost by another rumbling, but one that sounds somehow more deliberate, almost handcrafted. You turn back to the crack in the wall and find it slowly sealing itself, the stones on either side of the gap stretching until they nearly touch. But then the ground shakes again, the ceiling bows, and the stones spring back. Whatever magical effort was just made has clearly failed, but you hardly dwell on that at all. You're already looking for your liege. The eye of the serpent binds the monarch of Galdron to the earth of the nation itself. King Frederick found that sensation too overwhelming and too reciprocal. Not only could he shape his territory, but he felt all the wounds inflicted on it, and the land felt his in return. With the help of his royal wizards and a dragon or two, he gave the eye a focal point in the castle cauldron itself. He retained his influence over all the nation, and while the empathetic connection was stronger than ever, it was only tied to the castle itself. Occasionally, when he was angry, the walls would grow so hot the tapestries burst into flame. But his control over the castle walls was powerful and precise, and no wizard could affect them but him. And Queen Ragna only refined the magic further. You know what it means when the castle walls move. What you don't know is whom you're looking for. You don't know if Queen Ragna survived that day at Helma, though clearly Galdrin itself did, in some form. And even if she did survive, you don't know how long you've been dead. Queen Ragna was nearing 50 when you last knew her. She could easily have had decades left if the war didn't intervene. Are you looking for her, one of her surviving children, even her young grandson, perhaps now grown? The person who storms into the catacombs with a crown atop his head is none of them. Perhaps it's been longer than you thought. Your king, you assume, is a man perhaps shy of 30, short and somewhat rounded in stature. He's darker complected than Ragna or her children, with coppery skin and eyes, his hair a fall of darker brown curls neatly tied off at the base of his neck in a style you don't recognize. The emerald and gold crown nestled amid those curls is definitely Galdrin's, as is the crest on his cape, green layered on brown. And removing all doubt is the red glow coming from his right hand, held high above his head. The eye of the serpent implanted in the monarch's very body. A final confirmation is the complement of warriors at his back. It's not unusual, of course, for a monarch to be attended, but King Frederick doubled his bodyguards when he began to wield the eye, bearing the dragon's warnings in mind. Queen Ragna increased their numbers even further. You were a guard to both of them, when you weren't needed elsewhere on a battlefield. I learned secret paths and stratagems to keep the crown from harm. Your Majesty, says one of the guards, surely you ought to retire to a safe house and repair the damage from afar? Her grip on her blade is tight, white-knuckled, and though she looks frantically around the catacombs, she's gazing in entirely the opposite direction when a ghost topples a casket inches away from the king. I can't, the king says curtly, stepping over the bones at his feet. With the disturbances, there's too much noise. I need to see it. There. Eyes fixed on the crack in the wall, he holds out his glowing hand. His brow furrows as he concentrates, but once again the stones shudder for a moment and refuse to close the gap. The king's glower deepens. It is not right. I don't know why it isn't working. The reason it isn't working seems fairly obvious to you. Two ghosts have risen up from the water pouring through the hole and are pressing at the sides, preventing them from sealing. The ghosts are slightly more formed than the others, with clearly delineated limbs and outlines of faces, but their expressions are utterly blank. Master-esque, says the king. Master denotes a wizard, and the figure who steps forward through the ankle-deep water bears no weapons or armor. They're wearing a long, dark coat, decorated with purple embroidery. Their hair is long, thick, and dark, with a reddish sheen that doesn't seem entirely natural. Not beyond the skill of an anatomist wizard who studies the human body, though it seems like a bit of a frivolous embellishment for one of the king's personal service. They're quite tall and broad, with skin a rich brown several shades darker than the king's, and they look perhaps 10 years his senior. Senna, the king says, in a lower tone than before, only just loud enough to carry to you. Can you see them? Senna examines the catacombs with dark, intent eyes. Ghosts are swirling up the walls, filling every corner. No, Senna proclaims after a moment. There is a technique I've theorized to refine the vision, but it's not... Wait, yes, I do see one. A rather clear one, too, though it doesn't seem inclined toward havoc. Just there. They lift a finger and point directly at you. The rest of the ghosts are indistinct in form, but obviously present, at least to you, but sounds as though the others, the living, can't see any of them. Except, for whatever reason, you. Well, might as well be polite. I bow. When you lift your head, Senna looks taken aback, but the king is uninterested. He fixes his gaze on you for just long enough to make it clear that he can see you too, then shakes his head. What I need is for the ones who are inclined toward havoc to show themselves. It's all... I can't... What's your technique? Unrefined and experimental, says Senna, still studying you. Certain adjustments to the lens of the eye that I'm hoping can help it tap into the spectral spectrum, so to speak. Hoping? The king repeats. Well, I did go blind when I tried it, Senna admits. There were cataracts and other complications. Reversible, obviously, but it took me a few hours, and this may not be the environment for it. The king is silent. I'm nearly certain I know what went wrong, for the record, Senna goes on. I'll try it again if you like, on myself, not you, of course. Unless you were talking about overstimulation with the disturbances to the castle. Do you think it would help if I were to temporarily disable your vision? Senna, the king says, and pauses a moment. I could temporarily disable my vision myself if I thought that would help. I have eyelids. Yes, they're very nice, Senna says absently. Their gaze is drifted back to you. Really, Alec, are you looking at the visible one? It's remarkably clear, and it's staying in one place, just over that casket. Whose casket is that, can you tell? Alec, though you very much doubt that's the king's full name, making you wonder what sort of relationship they have, sighs. He looks in your direction again, though he's gazing more through you than at you, and you think he's leaning into his connection with the castle rather than recalling the catacombs layout. In that section, someone who died at least 200 years ago, he says. I can't tell any more without just reading the plaque. 200 years ago, at least. Why would I lie dormant for that long and wake up now? There must be a reason for it. That thought is an anchor, something to steady you as you find yourself suddenly adrift in the centuries. Someone or something woke you up. You heard them. Somewhere in all of this, there's an explanation for why you're looking down at your own moldering casket. You're going to find it. The king presses his hands to his eyes. Senna, you know I'll indulge you at any other time, he says, but the castle is a breath away from crumbling. Can you do this spell, or can't you? They don't need to, comes a new voice. The crowd of guards separates to allow a tall young woman through. There's an emerald and gold circlet atop her head. Her skin is a warm brown, her hair is a riot of curls much less tame than the king's, and her eyes are solid white flares of light that shine like the sun. The last part makes it difficult to take in any more details about her. Iris, says Senna in a strangled voice. Their jaw works for a moment before they add, You've been going through my notes again. You told me I was allowed, Iris says, not looking their way. Admittedly, it's somewhat difficult to tell if she can see. Alec glances between Iris and Senna. Is that your spell? He asks. He doesn't seem nearly as perturbed as Senna does. My unrefined and experimental spell, yes, Senna says tightly. You were about to test it on yourself, Iris retorts. Again. And am I a princess of the realm, Iris? Senna asks, arching an eyebrow. I don't know, Iris says, voice suddenly flatter than before. You'd probably just lie about it if you were. Something in her tone makes you take another look at her face, and you realize that beneath the glow, she's even younger than you first thought. A girl, rather than a woman, no more than 16. Senna, at her words, winces and goes silent. Alec rubs his eyes again. The spell, Iris. Can you see the ghosts or not? I can see... Iris frowns, concentrating. Clouds or shadows. That could be the ghosts, or it could be the cataracts, Senna murmurs, arms folded across her chest. You begin to grasp the difficulty. There are a great number of things about the situation you still don't understand, but you do know this much. The living can't see the rest of the ghosts. You can, and if you don't get rid of them so the king can repair the castle, it's going to collapse on top of all of you, and that's a very familiar feeling. Admittedly, it might not mean much for you in your new state, but it's rather early in your afterlife to take the risk. I direct the others to the ghosts. They seem like they'd know what to do if they could find them. There's something odd about the idea of talking in your state, but it doesn't feel impossible. You try to clear your throat, find that no sound or sensation registers, and simply begin to speak. They're in the crack in the wall. They're holding it open. Everyone gathered at the other end of the tomb jumps, almost in unison. Alec straightens, his shoulders very stiff. Senna, he says, your ghost is speaking. Have any of them ever spoken? Not that I've seen, Senna says. They look something close to delighted, particularly in comparison to everyone else. But it's not as though we have a great deal of experience with them. I can see them, Iris interjects. That's one of the shadows. We can all see that one, Senna mutters, but then looks back to you. What did you say, friend? I fear we were a bit startled. The ghosts there, in that crack in the wall, holding it open so the king can't repair it, you say? Senna's eyes widen even further, and they take a step forward, but Alec grabs them by the arm. We can't just take the thing at its word, he snaps. It's different, somehow, but it's still a specter. Why should it be on our side and not with the other ghosts? I have no reason to lie to you, you say. I don't know what's going on any more than you do. You think that's a reason we should trust you, do you? Alec retorts. That you don't know what's going on? There is something in that hole, Iris says softly. Shadows, but I'm not sure if it's ghosts or I can't see very well. I told you, Senna says, voice growing sharper. You shouldn't just. Before they can finish the sentence, there's an enormous crash. One of the caskets near yours is toppled to the ground, more bones flying out of it. They land in one of the deeper sections of the water and quickly float off in different directions, mixing with the other scattered bones to a degree that you're not certain any original skeleton could be reconstructed from them. For a moment, there's silence. Nearly everyone looks stricken, staring at the swirling bones. But Alex strides forward. Fury burns in his eyes, nearly as bright as Iris's. I know which one that was, he says. Frederick II, first bearer of the eye. There will be no more of this, not here. He thrusts his glowing hand upward, and all at once the ground before him turns to sharp spikes that burst upward. You're hovering over a casket rather than the floor, so they miss you, but nearly all of the rest of the ghosts are skewered where they float. Water flies through the air, and the ghosts dissipate. They don't look disturbed, and they make no murmuring sounds, but are simply there one moment and gone the next. As you're wondering what's become of them, the floor returns to normal and the hole in the wall seals shut. The tomb is covered in bones and rubble, but at peace. There's a series of gasps behind you, and you turn to see Alec, drenched in sweat and swaying on his feet, supported by Iris's arm. What are you? He demands through heaving breaths. Why are you still here? You stare back at the king, your king, trying to formulate a response. Your sense of identity has never faded, unlike the rest of these shades, and yet you still don't feel prepared to answer the question. It already feels strange that your voice sounds the same as it always did, though perhaps with a bit of an echo. I can answer that, comes a voice. Senna, without your realizing it, has joined you at your casket and is peering down at the engraving. Their eyes are wide. My word, in our hour of greatest need, the legends have come true. Alec is suddenly very still, even his exhausted swaying coming to a halt. What did you say? King Alexander, Senna says. They sweep into a bow, but not to Alec. They're facing you. I present to you your sworn sword, friend to the dragons and hero of Helma. Elwitty Sorrowford returns to us. That's all for this episode, and we'll continue with Chapter 2. See ya.